It all started on a quiet night at a space monitoring station far from the noise of the cities. The world was asleep, but the scientists and technicians were wide awake, eyes fixed on their screens, listening to the whispers of the universe. Their job was to track every signal, every movement in the skies, even the faintest hint of something unusual. For decades, they had seen strange things, from random bursts of energy to drifting asteroids, but nothing had ever truly alarmed them. That night, however, something changed. A young technician, known for her curiosity and sharp instincts, noticed something strange on her screen. At first glance, it looked like a normal blip, just another star sending signals across space. But she felt in her gut that this was different. The signal had a rhythm, a repeated pattern, as if someone or something was trying to communicate. It wasn't like the usual cosmic noise that scientists were used to. She leaned closer, adjusting her instruments, double-checking the readings. Every calculation pointed to the same conclusion. This was not natural. She immediately called over the senior scientist. He was cautious, experienced, and usually calm in moments like these, but even he frowned at the readings. They cross-checked with other observatories around the world. The same pattern appeared everywhere. It was subtle, almost like a whisper, but unmistakable. The signal was coming from a part of space that had always been empty in their records, a dark and cold stretch beyond the familiar planets. For hours, the team tried to decode it. They ran simulations, tried translating the sequence into numbers, then into basic shapes and sounds, but nothing worked. It was too complex to be random, too structured to be noise. The pattern suggested intelligence, a mind at work, something or someone reaching across the vast emptiness. The thought sent a chill down their spines. Humanity had never been so directly noticed by something outside. Their world news of the discovery did not spread immediately. Only a few top-level officials were informed. The team was ordered to keep everything confidential. Rumors, after all, could cause panic, and the world was not ready. But inside the station, excitement and fear mixed in equal measure. Scientists whispered in corners about the possibilities. Was this life beyond Earth? Was it friendly or dangerous? Could it even understand them? Every answer seemed more frightening than the question itself. Outside, life went on normally. Cities buzzed with their routines. People worried about everyday problems, completely unaware that above them, humanity's fate might be changing. Inside the station, every monitor, every screen, every radio frequency became a window into the unknown. Days passed, but no other signal followed. Yet the pattern lingered, faint but persistent. It was as if someone was waiting, observing, deciding what to do next. The young technician stayed awake longer than anyone else, drawn by a mix of fear and fascination. She felt connected to the signal in a way she could not explain. There was a sense that the universe had just whispered a secret to humanity, a secret that could change everything. Her mind raced with questions. Could humanity respond? Should they respond? And if they did, what would happen? The senior scientist finally called a meeting with the whole team. "We don't know what this is yet," he said, his voice steady but serious. "It could be harmless. It could be dangerous. But we must act carefully. We cannot make any mistakes. Everything we do from this moment may change the future of our species." The weight of his words hung in the air. No one spoke for a while. The hum of computers filled the room, a constant reminder that they were listening to something far beyond human understanding. They decided to document everything meticulously. Every pulse, every gap, every rise and fall in the signal was recorded. They built models to try and predict what the next pattern might be. They ran experiments, simulated responses, tested every theory. But no matter how hard they tried, the message remained undecipherable. It was as if whoever or whatever was sending it had a mind far beyond human comprehension. Despite the confusion, hope persisted. Some scientists believed that if they could understand the signal, it might be humanity's first real contact with life beyond Earth. The thought was intoxicating. For generations, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now, perhaps, they were not. The idea that intelligent life existed somewhere out there, possibly watching them, filled the station with a mix of awe and terror. Outside the station, the nights grew longer, colder, and quieter. Occasionally, a satellite would pass overhead, and the team would glance at it, half expecting the signal to jump, to respond, to reveal more. But it never did. The universe remained patient and silent, as if testing humanity's resolve. Some nights, the young technician would lie awake in her small dormitory, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the distant source of the signal. Who were they? What did they want? Why were they reaching out now, after millions of years of silence? The team started noticing other strange anomalies. Tiny shifts in asteroid paths, unusual energy readings, and unexplained atmospheric disturbances. None of these could be directly linked to the signal, but the timing made them uneasy. It was as if the universe was sending a series of messages, each one harder to interpret than the last. Humanity's patience and curiosity were being tested, and the consequences of failure could be unimaginable. The young technician became obsessed. She spent long hours cross-referencing data, writing notes, making sketches. Her colleagues noticed a change in her. The excitement in her eyes was tinged with fear. She sometimes muttered questions aloud, wondering if anyone or anything was listening. Her dedication inspired others. Soon, the whole team was working around the clock, their lives revolving entirely around the signal and what it might mean. Then, late one night, a breakthrough happened. The technician noticed a subtle variation in the pattern that no one else had caught. It wasn't a message in the conventional sense, but it was consistent with some form of communication. She called the senior scientist, and together they studied the anomaly for hours. The realization hit them. The signal was not random. It was intelligent, deliberate, and possibly waiting for a response. The discovery brought both exhilaration and dread. They had found proof of intelligent life beyond Earth, but they had no idea what would happen if they tried to communicate. The station became a place of tension. Every decision mattered. Every word they considered sending could have consequences that no human had ever faced before. Humanity had taken its first step into an unknown world, and the weight of that moment was crushing. News agencies were still unaware. Governments debated in secret whether to prepare a response or wait for more information. The young technician, though overwhelmed, kept her focus. She understood that patience was key. Rushing could trigger consequences they were not ready to handle. They could only watch, wait, and try to learn as much as possible about this distant presence. As days turned into weeks, the signal remained, always just out of reach of full understanding. Each pulse carried a mystery that haunted every waking hour at the station. And though no one could say for certain what the future held, one thing was clear: humanity had been noticed. Something, somewhere, had decided to reach across the vastness of space, and now Earth could not ignore it. The night sky, once a symbol of quiet beauty, had become a silent battlefield of curiosity, fear, and anticipation. For the young technician, the nights were the hardest. She would sit by the telescope, staring into the black void, feeling both insignificant and essential at the same time. Humanity had been given a message, and now it was up to them to understand it, to prepare, and perhaps, one day, to answer. But for now, all they could do was wait and watch, knowing that their world had just taken the first step toward a future none of them could imagine. And so, the quiet monitoring station became the center of the most important discovery in human history. The faint signal, small and almost imperceptible, carried with it the weight of a universe far larger than anyone had ever known. Humanity had been seen, and nothing would ever be the same again. Weeks had passed since the strange signal was first discovered. The world's most secretive space agencies had been quietly monitoring the skies, analyzing every pulse, every fluctuation, every hint that might explain what was out there. But then, something even more extraordinary happened. Something that changed everything. It started with a tiny blip on several telescopes simultaneously. At first, astronomers thought it was just another asteroid passing through the solar system. But as the object moved, it didn't behave like a natural body. It slowed down. It altered its trajectory as if it were aware of the planets and their gravitational pull. Nothing in recorded history had ever done that. The small blip became larger, clearer, and unmistakably artificial. The world remained unaware at first. Cities buzzed with their usual life, people worrying about daily struggles, completely oblivious to the fact that something from beyond their world was approaching. But inside the monitoring stations, tension grew. Every scientist, every engineer, every observer felt the same mix of awe and fear. They were witnessing something no human had ever seen before, a vessel moving with intent toward Earth. By the time it reached the orbit of Mars, it was visible in multiple observatories. It was not round, not like a natural asteroid. Its shape was strange, angular in places, smooth in others, and it seemed to shimmer slightly as it reflected the distant sunlight. Cameras on satellites began capturing images, and soon world governments had undeniable proof. The secret was out. Humanity was no longer alone, and everyone would soon know it. Panic was immediate. Leaders of major nations called emergency meetings. Scientists were pulled into briefings. Security agencies went on high alert. And yet, no one knew exactly what to do. Was this visitor friendly? Was it a threat? Could it be reasoned with, or was it already too late? The questions multiplied faster than the answers. People across the world first noticed something unusual in the skies. Some thought they were seeing a new comet. Others assumed it was a weather balloon or a satellite on an unusual orbit. But then, more people noticed it, and it became impossible to ignore. Phones buzzed with pictures, social media lit up with speculation, and news channels scrambled to report the phenomenon. Fear and curiosity collided, creating a chaotic mix of excitement and dread. The vessel's approach wasn't slow in the ordinary sense. It was deliberate. It seemed to understand Earth's gravity, its orbit, and even the movement of the moon. It passed through regions carefully, avoiding collisions with satellites, or perhaps calculating them with precision. Inside the monitoring stations, scientists could barely keep up. Every move was studied, analyzed, and debated. No one could understand its intentions. Then, the first subtle signal came. Unlike the previous faint signal, this one wasn't just data, it affected Earth's technology. Communications briefly cut out in several regions. Satellites flickered. Power grids experienced minor, unexplained surges. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make the world realize this was no ordinary object passing by. Someone or something was aware of them, and it was testing, perhaps observing, humanity's readiness. Despite the uncertainty, a plan was quickly formed. International space agencies decided to attempt peaceful contact. Messages were sent in binary, in simple patterns, and even mathematical sequences. They hoped that if this intelligence could recognize logic and reason, they might communicate safely. Teams of linguists, mathematicians, engineers, and even artists worked together to create signals that could be universally understood. Every symbol, every pulse, every frequency was chosen with care. But the response was not what anyone expected. Instead of communication, the vessel emitted a powerful pulse of energy toward Earth's orbiting satellites. Several small satellites disintegrated instantly. Pieces rained back toward Earth, though most burned up harmlessly in the atmosphere. The demonstration was not violent in the traditional sense, but it was a clear message. Humanity was being tested. These were not explorers seeking friendship. They were assessing capability. Panic grew among governments. Security agencies debated whether to hide the damage, to avoid global hysteria, or to openly announce the vessel's behavior. Scientists scrambled to understand the energy pulse, running simulations to predict whether the next one could be stronger. Each day, the vessel's presence became more ominous. It did not land. It did not communicate in words, but it made its presence known in ways that could not be ignored. Inside the monitoring stations, humans worked tirelessly. Exhausted but determined, they analyzed every anomaly, every detail of the vessel's behavior. It moved with precision, never wasting energy, always calculating. Some scientists argued it must be studying Earth, measuring humanity's response to its arrival. Others feared it was scouting for resources, or worse, judging whether humans posed a threat. Every theory was terrifying, yet no one could stop themselves from watching the young technician from the first. Discovery felt a deep mix of fear and fascination. She stared at the vessel for hours, sometimes forgetting to eat or sleep. Every movement, every shimmer of light seemed significant. She wondered what it might think of humanity, what it might decide if it observed humans too closely. Could the vessel even recognize them as intelligent? Could it understand curiosity, fear, and determination? She didn't know, but the thought of their judgment kept her awake at night. As days passed, the vessel moved closer, eventually reaching the orbit near Earth. Its size became clear, far larger than any human-built craft, massive and imposing. Satellites recorded every angle, revealing complex surfaces, intricate designs, and technology that no human had ever imagined. The vessel seemed alive in its motion, aware and deliberate, responding to Earth's movements as if it had predicted them. Humanity began to realize that this was not a random visit. Someone or something had chosen this moment in history to make contact, and they were not doing so casually. The world's attention focused on the skies. Leaders held emergency meetings daily, scientists worked round the clock, and ordinary people looked up in wonder and fear. Never had humanity felt so small, so fragile, yet so connected to the vastness of space that despite fear, some hope remained. There were still questions. Could this intelligence be reasoned with? Could humans learn something from them? Could the vessel's presence be a chance for understanding rather than destruction? Scientists worked tirelessly on this hope, running simulations of communication, trying to find patterns, and attempting to predict what the vessel might do next. But the vessel did not respond with words. Instead, it hovered, observing. Its silent presence was a reminder that humanity was being watched, studied, and perhaps judged. The realization was both humbling and terrifying. Humans had spent centuries dreaming of contact with life beyond Earth, imagining it in friendly ways. Now, contact had arrived, and it was not friendly, not warm, and not easily understood. Every day, people around the world became more aware of the vessel. Social media exploded with images, speculations, and theories. Children stayed up past bedtime staring at the sky. Scientists appeared on television, trying to explain what was happening without causing panic. Yet, no explanation could capture the magnitude of what humanity faced. The vessel's intentions remained a mystery, a puzzle that could not yet be solved. Inside the monitoring stations, humans worked tirelessly. They calculated trajectories, studied energy pulses, and theorized about the vessel's technology. Night after night, they analyzed, adjusted, and tried again. Sleep became a luxury, meals a brief pause between observations. And through it all, the world continued, unaware of the intensity, the tension, and the fear that gripped the hearts of those who had the closest view of the visitor. Then, One night, a subtle change occurred. The vessel emitted a series of pulses, not aimed at Earth, but at the space around it. Scientists noticed slight movements, adjustments in its position, and faint fluctuations in its energy output. It seemed almost reactive. Perhaps it had detected humanity's attempts at communication. Perhaps it was trying to understand, to measure, or to test. The discovery brought both relief and anxiety. Humanity had been noticed, yes, but now they had evidence that their actions mattered. That someone or something was paying attention, the young technician, exhausted but resolute, continued to study the vessel. She documented every change, every signal, every movement. Her dedication inspired others. Slowly, a global effort emerged. Scientists, engineers, and strategists from around the world began working together, sharing data, pooling knowledge, and preparing for the unknown. Humanity's instinct to survive and understand had united them like never before, and so the stage was set. The vessel hovered near Earth, massive, mysterious, and intelligent. Humanity watched, studied, and waited. The world had taken its first real step into the unknown, and the presence of the vessel made one thing painfully clear. The universe was not empty, and Earth was no longer alone. The days of quiet observation were over. Something had arrived, and whatever came next would test the limits of humanity's courage. Intelligence and unity. The night sky had become a canvas of fear and wonder, and humanity was only beginning to understand its role in a much larger story. The vessel's arrival was no accident. Its silent, deliberate presence carried a weight that could not be ignored. And for weeks, humanity watched the vessel silently hovering near Earth. People around the world had grown used to its presence in a strange way. They could see it on satellite images, sometimes glimmering under the sun, sometimes casting long shadows across the surface of the planet. Children would point at the sky, wondering if it was alive. Adults whispered in cafes and offices, questioning what it wanted and whether it was friendly. But inside the monitoring stations, and especially among the scientists tasked with understanding it, there was no comfort. Every day was filled with tension, with the weight of the unknown pressing down harder and harder. The first attempt at communication had failed. Signals sent from Earth were met with responses that were not messages in any human sense. Satellites and equipment sometimes flickered or shut down briefly, as if the vessel were testing humanity, warning them, or simply observing their every move. The small disruptions were harmless, but they made everyone realize that this intelligence was not only advanced, it was far beyond what humans had ever imagined. A global council of scientists, engineers, and political leaders was formed to plan the next move. The goal was simple in theory. Attempt contact again, this time more carefully, more deliberately. Messages were crafted in mathematics, in sequences of prime numbers, in diagrams that illustrated basic concepts of Earth and humanity. Every detail was considered, every symbol debated. They wanted to be clear. Humans were intelligent, peaceful, and curious. Not dangerous, at least. Not yet. The day the new messages were transmitted, the world held its breath. People watched the skies, wondering if a reply would come, if the silence would break, if history would change in an instant. Scientists monitored every frequency, every reflection of light, every anomaly in orbit. And then it happened. The vessel reacted, but not in a way anyone had hoped. A pulse of energy, more powerful than before, shot toward Earth's satellites. Several instruments failed instantly. Pieces of broken satellites began to descend into the atmosphere, burning up as they entered. Panic spread among the monitoring teams. Governments received warnings from space agencies, and emergency meetings were called around the globe. Humanity had tried to communicate, and the response was a clear demonstration of power, a reminder of how small and vulnerable the planet really was. Inside the stations, The atmosphere grew tense. Scientists and technicians worked furiously to analyze the pulse. It was unlike anything created by humans. It moved faster than any signal could travel. It altered energy fields unpredictably, and yet it seemed precise, deliberate, controlled. It wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. The vessel had deliberately targeted the satellites, sending a message humanity could not ignore. Despite the fear, a determination began to grow. The young technician who had first discovered the original signal stayed at her post for hours longer than anyone else, documenting every fluctuation in the vessel's energy field. Her mind raced with calculations and possibilities. Could this pulse be a warning? A test? Or was it the first step in a larger plan the vessel had already prepared for? She didn't know, but she felt that every observation mattered, that humanity's future depended on understanding even the smallest detail. The Council of World Leaders and Scientists realized that humanity could no longer wait. The vessel's presence near Earth was no longer passive. It was interacting, testing, probing. Every nation understood that ignoring the reality would be catastrophic. International cooperation reached a level never seen before. For once, political differences were set aside. Scientists shared data freely. Military strategists collaborated openly. Humanity, for the first time, moved as one. Attempts to communicate continued, but now with more caution. The messages were shorter, simpler, designed to be clear yet non-threatening. They emphasized basic human concepts: numbers, shapes, the position of Earth in the solar system, and the presence of life. Meanwhile, engineers prepared defensive measures, not to attack, but to observe and protect. Early warning systems, energy shields, and interceptors were brought online. Humanity understood the delicate balance. They had to survive, but they could not provoke the vessel further. People around the world began to notice changes in their skies. Satellites sometimes blinked, radio signals cut out for a few seconds. Strange auroras appeared in unexpected places. Though minor, these events fueled fear and speculation. News outlets speculated wildly, and social media spread both panic and fascination. Conspiracy theories emerged, while others pleaded for calm. The truth, however, was far stranger than anyone imagined. The planet was under observation by a presence more advanced than humans could fully understand. As the vessel's actions became clearer, scientists began forming a new hypothesis. Perhaps the intelligence inside the vessel did not see humans as friends or enemies yet, but as a species to measure. Every energy pulse, every reaction to human signals could be a test. The young technician documented these theories in exhaustive detail, noting correlations between human attempts at communication and the vessel's responses. Slowly, a pattern emerged, though it was not yet fully understood. The vessel did not stay in one place. It moved across the skies with precision, maintaining orbit, but occasionally dipping closer to the planet. Its movements were deliberate, almost graceful, but they carried an unmistakable message of control. Satellites detected strange emissions from the vessel's surface, patterns that resembled light and energy in combination, like an advanced form of language. It was unlike anything humans had seen, a system of communication beyond the limits of human technology, but undeniably intelligent. Inside the monitoring stations, exhaustion became a common enemy. Scientists, technicians, and engineers worked long shifts, analyzing data, testing simulations, and predicting the vessel's next move. Sleep became brief and fragmented. Meals were hurried, and stress levels soared. Yet, despite the exhaustion, a sense of purpose grew. Humanity had never faced a challenge like this, and the need to survive, to understand, to respond intelligently, gave them strength. The first minor confrontation occurred when a probe designed to study the vessel was launched. The probe sent back images and data for only a few seconds before it was destroyed by an unexpected energy pulse. The destruction was precise, controlled, and immediate. Scientists studied the data carefully, realizing that the vessel's capabilities were beyond imagination. But even in that failure, they gained knowledge. They learned how fast the vessel could react, how sensitive it was to interference, and how careful humans would need to be in the future. People began to realize that humanity's very existence might be tested. Some feared the worst, a hostile species capable of destroying Earth without effort. Others believed in hope. Perhaps the vessel was assessing humanity, and intelligence, cooperation, and patience might be enough to survive. Across the globe, curiosity mixed with fear. People stayed up at night, looking at the sky, wondering what the vessel was thinking, what it could do next, and whether humans could prove themselves worthy of life on their planet. Inside the stations, the young technician worked tirelessly, observing every reaction of the vessel. She noticed patterns in the energy pulses, subtle differences that hinted at intention rather than randomness. She shared her observations with colleagues, suggesting that the vessel might be capable of understanding logic and strategy. For the first time, hope returned. Perhaps humanity could influence the vessel's decisions, not with weapons, but with intelligence, patience, and careful observation. The vessel's presence began to unify humanity in unexpected ways. Governments, scientists, and civilians began cooperating on unprecedented scales. Data was shared openly. The media focused on education, encouraging calm and understanding rather than panic. People volunteered to help with scientific projects, tracking the vessel, and even sending theoretical messages into space. Humanity was working together for the first time against a challenge that none could fully understand. And then, the vessel did something unexpected. It hovered silently for an unusually long period, energy readings steady but focused. For hours, it remained in a position directly above Earth's equator. Satellites detected no interference, no pulses, no movement. It was as if the intelligence was observing patiently, perhaps waiting, perhaps thinking. Scientists speculated endlessly. Was it testing patience, analyzing humanity's behavior, or simply resting? The unknown hung over the world like a heavy cloud. The young technician, exhausted but determined, continued her observations. She recorded every fluctuation in energy, every minor movement, every change in the vessel's position. She theorized about what the intelligence might want, how it measured human actions, and what the next step could be. Slowly, humanity began to realize that survival depended not on weapons or aggression, but on understanding, cooperation, and careful action. The presence of the vessel had already changed the world. People began to look at the stars differently, appreciating the fragility of their planet, the uniqueness of life, and the vastness of the universe. Even simple acts, like observing the sky or studying science, took on new meaning. Humanity was no longer just living on Earth. They were part of a larger, unknown story. And through it all, the vessel remained, massive, silent, and intelligent. Every movement, every pulse, As the days passed, it became clear that humanity could no longer just observe. The vessel hovering near Earth was not idle. It was aware of everything humans did, measuring, calculating, testing reactions. Each attempt at communication, each adjustment in satellites, each precautionary measure was noticed. For the first time in history, the entire world understood that survival depended on action, strategy, and unity. Leaders across the globe came together, holding emergency conferences that spanned hours. Military generals, scientists, engineers, and communication experts sat side by side, working through plans that would have been unimaginable a few months ago. For the first time, political divisions mattered less than the need to protect humanity. Everyone understood that if this intelligence saw weakness, Earth could pay a terrible price. Inside monitoring stations, teams worked around the clock. Scientists analyzed the vessel's behavior, Engineers built prototypes for energy shields and defensive satellites, and strategists simulated every possible scenario. Nothing was left to chance. Every pulse of energy from the vessel, every shift. In orbit, every flicker of its surface was studied meticulously. The young technician who had first discovered the signal continued her work, now leading a small team dedicated to tracking the vessel's movements and predicting its next actions. The challenge was immense. The vessel's technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built. Its movements were precise, almost instantaneous, and it could manipulate energy fields in ways no one fully understood. Yet humanity adapted. Engineers designed drones that could intercept small debris, satellites equipped with sensors that could detect energy pulses, and shields that could absorb or redirect minor attacks. Every success, even small, gave hope. Humanity was learning, evolving, and responding in ways that the vessel had not anticipated. Meanwhile, communication attempts continued, though now they were far more cautious. Messages were kept short and simple, using basic mathematics, logic, and images to represent human life and our position in the solar system. Scientists debated endlessly about whether to show humanity's weapons or technological capabilities. They worried that demonstrating too much strength could provoke a stronger response. Others argued that showing intelligence, creativity, and peaceful intent might be enough to prove humans were worthy of survival. For civilians, the presence of the vessel created a mix of fear and fascination. People around the world watched the skies like never before. Families gathered at night to look through telescopes. Children sketched the images they saw, and communities held discussions about what life beyond Earth might mean. Though fear was real, curiosity thrived. Humanity had dreamed of contact for centuries, and now it had arrived, though in a way far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The first direct test came when the vessel sent a massive energy pulse toward Earth's orbit. This time, it was stronger, more precise, and clearly designed to observe how humans would respond. Satellites trembled under the force, and a few broke apart entirely. Pieces fell into the atmosphere, burning up harmlessly, but the demonstration was a warning. Humanity's defenses were tested, and for the first time, they realized that the vessel was not only advanced, it was intelligent in the most calculating sense. Despite the danger, humans did not falter. Teams quickly activated energy shields, redirected satellites, and adjusted orbits. Each action was tracked and analyzed by the vessel, but humans learned from every pulse. They began to anticipate its behavior, predicting the energy bursts and adjusting their systems accordingly. It was a battle of intellect, a test of observation, and humanity rose to the challenge. Scientists speculated that the vessel's purpose was not immediate destruction, but evaluation. It seemed to measure capability, strategy, and resilience. Every movement humans made was assessed for intelligence, adaptability, and coordination. The young technician noted patterns in the pulses, subtle changes that hinted at assessment rather than aggression. Her notes were shared with world leaders, who used them to refine strategies and improve defenses. Humanity was being tested, and the test was rigorous. While preparation continued, ordinary life adapted in subtle ways. People learned to look up without fear, understanding that survival depended on awareness. Schools introduced lessons about space, satellites, and science. News outlets focused on education and calm reporting. Communities held discussions about global unity, cooperation, and resilience. Fear remained, but it was paired with hope and determination. Humanity was learning not only to survive, but to evolve in real time. Military forces also adapted. Rather than preparing for an outright war, they focused on defense, protection, and observation. Satellites were armed with sensors and protective systems. Ground-based teams monitored energy fluctuations and learned to respond quickly. Strategy meetings emphasized intelligence over force. Humanity understood that confrontation would only provoke the vessel further. Success depended on smart, coordinated, and calculated responses. The vessel remained a constant presence, silently observing. Its massive size, strange shape, and shimmering surface were both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Scientists could detect patterns in its energy emissions, but the underlying technology remained a mystery. Yet, humanity persisted. They learned to track subtle changes, interpret faint signals, and anticipate movement. Every successful adjustment built confidence. Humanity was beginning to prove itself, not through aggression, but through intelligence and resilience. One of the most significant breakthroughs occurred when engineers discovered that the vessel's energy pulses could be partially disrupted using synchronized satellite transmissions. It was a risky maneuver, but the test succeeded. The pulse lost precision, weakening slightly, and the vessel adjusted its orbit in response. Scientists realized that this was not only a defensive tactic, but also a potential way to communicate indirectly, showing that humans could understand and respond to its actions. The young technician led a team that monitored these interactions closely. They studied the vessel's adjustments and developed models to predict future behavior. It became clear that the vessel was testing humans in multiple ways: their ability to coordinate, to adapt, to respond intelligently, and to survive under pressure. Each observation, each small success, reinforced the idea that humanity's unity and intelligence were being evaluated across the world. People began to feel a sense of collective purpose. Communities, governments, and organizations worked together as never before. Volunteers assisted scientists with calculations and simulations. Students studied mathematics, physics, and communication theory with a renewed interest. Humanity was learning, evolving, and preparing in ways that reached beyond individual nations or cultures. For the first time, the species was united by a common challenge that transcended borders. The vessel, massive and silent, continued to hover. Its presence in orbit was a reminder that the test was ongoing. Each energy pulse, each subtle movement, each faint shimmer of light was part of a larger evaluation. Humanity had responded with intelligence, resilience, and unity, but the outcome was still uncertain. No one knew what the next step would be, and the tension remained high in monitoring stations. Scientists and engineers rarely slept. They calculated, observed, and refined their strategies constantly. Minor errors were corrected immediately, and every new piece of data was analyzed for patterns. The young technician became a central figure in this effort, inspiring others through dedication, curiosity, and tireless focus. Humanity had never faced a challenge like this, and their response was extraordinary. Despite the pressure, hope persisted. The knowledge that humanity could adapt, respond intelligently, and work together gave courage to those on the front lines and to the billions watching from Earth. Every action mattered. Every observation was important, and every calculation could influence the vessel's perception of humanity. The species was learning not only to survive, but to grow stronger under pressure. As the days turned into weeks, humanity's coordination improved. Energy shields, satellite networks, and observation systems became more efficient. Communication attempts, while cautious, continued in parallel. People began to understand that survival depended not on fear or force, but on intelligence, observation, and unity. The young technician, exhausted but resolute, continued to lead her team, documenting patterns and suggesting strategies. Her dedication embodied humanity's determination to rise to the challenge. And so, humanity faced the first real test of intelligence and unity in history. The vessel's presence was both a threat and a lesson. Every pulse, every movement, and every adjustment carried meaning. Humanity had learned to adapt, to observe, and to respond. The species had proven it could survive under pressure, think strategically, and work together. But the vessel remained massive and intelligent, silently waiting to see whether humans could rise to the next challenge. The skies had become a place of both fear and learning. Humanity had faced the first serious confrontation, survived, and adapted. The planet had come together in unprecedented ways. The young technician and countless others had worked tirelessly to study, anticipate, and respond to the vessel. And though uncertainty remained, one undeniable truth emerged. Humanity was capable of intelligence, resilience. Humanity had survived the first weeks of observing the vessel, adapting to its presence and learning to respond to its energy pulses. But now, the situation had reached a critical stage. Scientists, engineers, and strategists had gathered all available data, hoping to find a weakness, a clue, anything that could give humanity an edge. Every night, satellites tracked the vessel's movement, while computers analyzed energy patterns, attempting to decode the alien intelligence behind them. The young technician, still leading her team, had noticed something unusual. Among the many pulses and energy surges, there was a subtle irregularity. A tiny shift in frequency appeared repeatedly at specific intervals. At first, it seemed insignificant, almost like noise in the data. But as she studied it, a theory began to form. Perhaps this irregularity was not accidental. Perhaps it could be exploited. If humans could amplify and use this irregularity, it might be possible to disrupt the vessel's energy systems, giving Earth a small but critical advantage. The discovery sparked immediate action. Teams of engineers and scientists worked around the clock to design instruments capable of broadcasting a precise frequency that could interfere with the vessel's operations. Satellites were modified, ground-based transmitters were recalibrated, and every calculation was triple-checked. The plan was risky. Humanity had never confronted a force this advanced before. If the interference failed, the vessel could retaliate with devastating consequences. Yet there was no alternative. Humanity had learned, adapted, and survived so far, but a decisive step was needed to gain control of their future. Meanwhile, world leaders coordinated on a scale never seen before. Military strategists advised on defense, not attack, preparing for the possibility that the vessel would respond aggressively. Scientists shared findings openly, discussing energy pulses, structural patterns, and orbital mechanics. Humanity's brightest minds were united by a single goal: to turn knowledge into action, to transform observation into influence, and to survive an intelligence far beyond their own. The vessel continued to hover, massive and silent, observing Earth with what seemed like deliberate patience. Its movements were measured, almost cautious, as if it understood the preparations being made below. Satellites detected slight adjustments in energy output when humans activated instruments near its orbit. The alien intelligence was aware of humanity's actions, watching closely, testing reactions, and perhaps assessing readiness. Humanity had to be precise, careful, and intelligent in every move. After days of preparation, the plan was ready. Ground-based transmitters, linked with modified satellites, were synchronized to broadcast the interference frequency. Every instrument was tested repeatedly. Every calculation had been verified. The team knew that failure was not an option. The young technician, exhausted but determined, oversaw the final checks, ensuring that the system would operate perfectly when the time came. The weight of the moment pressed on everyone's shoulders. This was not just a test of technology. It was a test of humanity's resolve, unity, and intelligence. When the moment finally arrived, the system was activated. The interference signal traveled through space, targeting the vessel with precision. For the first time, scientists observed a reaction that suggested more than observation. The vessel's movements became slightly unstable. Its energy pulses fluctuated, and minor shifts in orbit were detected. Humanity had found a vulnerability, however small. Excitement and fear mixed in equal measure. The intelligence observing Earth was not invincible, and humans had discovered a way to influence its actions. The vessel did not retaliate immediately. Instead, it adjusted its orbit more carefully, as if recalculating, analyzing, and testing the new variable introduced by humans. Scientists observed its reactions, noting patterns and responses. Each fluctuation, each adjustment, was studied to understand the limits of the interference. Humanity realized that this was more than a defense tactic. It was a form of communication, a demonstration that humans could learn, adapt, and act with intelligence. The young technician documented every reaction meticulously. Her notes, shared with world leaders and scientists, became the blueprint for the next stage of preparation. Humanity's strategy was no longer just survival. It was understanding the intelligence, learning from it, and preparing for decisive action. Satellites were repositioned, transmitters recalibrated, and backup systems prepared. Every detail mattered. Humanity had to be precise, coordinated, and unified. As the interference continued, minor disruptions in the vessel's systems became more noticeable. Its energy pulses lost coherence in specific areas, its surface glimmers fluctuated, and small adjustments in orbit became more pronounced. Humanity realized that persistence, intelligence, and coordination could affect even the most advanced technology. The realization brought a surge of hope. For the first time, humans had a tangible advantage, however limited, against an intelligence far superior in raw power. The next challenge was to plan the final step. Scientists and strategists worked tirelessly to design a coordinated operation that would maximize the impact of the interference. It was not an attack in the traditional sense. It was a precise, calculated maneuver to destabilize the vessel, forcing it into a position where human forces could act decisively. Every satellite, every transmitter, and every backup system had a specific role. Humanity had learned the value of patience, observation, and intelligence. Now, it was time to put that knowledge into action. Meanwhile, the world watched with a mixture of fear and anticipation. People had become more aware of the skies, more conscious of the fragility of their planet, and more united by the challenge facing humanity. Schools introduced lessons on energy, physics, and space. Communities discussed strategy, resilience, and cooperation. The presence of the vessel had changed society in ways few could have imagined. Humanity was more aware, more intelligent, and more united than ever before. The young technician, exhausted from weeks of relentless work, remained focused. She led simulations, adjusted frequencies, and coordinated teams across continents. Her dedication inspired others, and slowly, humanity's collective efforts began to take shape. The vessel's responses were studied in real time, and every adjustment improved understanding. Humans were learning, adapting, and influencing a force far beyond their comprehension. Finally, the moment for decisive action arrived. The interference frequency was broadcast at maximum power, synchronized across satellites and ground-based systems. Humanity held its collective breath. The vessel's movements became noticeably unstable. Its energy pulses lost consistency, and minor structural oscillations were detected. The intelligence observing Earth was reacting in ways humans could measure. Hope surged, but caution remained. One wrong move could reverse everything. Scientists, engineers, and strategists monitored the results closely. Adjustments were made in real time, ensuring maximum effectiveness of the interference. The young technician observed every fluctuation, noting patterns, predicting reactions, and guiding the operation. Humanity's combined intelligence, resilience, and coordination were being tested in the most intense way possible. Every pulse, every calculation, every decision mattered. Then, a breakthrough occurred. The vessel, massive and imposing, began to wobble slightly in orbit. Its energy emissions fluctuated more than ever before. For the first time, it seemed vulnerable. Humanity had forced a reaction that could be exploited. Engineers began preparing the final steps, ready to stabilize Earth's position, protect satellites, and maximize the advantage gained from the vessel's temporary weakness. The young technician and her team watched, knowing that this moment was the turning point. As the interference continued, scientists realized the implications. Humanity had discovered a way to influence, even partially control, a force far more advanced than anything ever built. It was a triumph of intelligence, observation, and coordination. The vessel, massive and silent, was not destroyed, but it had been forced to respond, to adapt, and to reveal its vulnerabilities. For the first time, humans had hoped. The young technician, exhausted but determined, documented every detail. Her observations would become the foundation for the next stage of the operation, using the vessel's temporary instability to further humanity's advantage. Satellites, energy shields, and ground-based systems were coordinated, ready to act at the precise moment. Humanity had learned the power of intelligence, unity, and careful action. Now it was time to put that knowledge to its ultimate test. The vessel hovered, massive, intelligent, and unstable. Humanity watched, calculated, and waited. Every movement mattered. Every decision could determine the future of the planet. The stage was set for the next phase, where courage, intelligence, and careful strategy would determine whether humanity could survive and perhaps even triumph. For the first time in history, humanity understood that survival was not about brute force. It was about intelligence, observation, coordination, and unity. The weeks of preparation, study, and careful adaptation had brought them to this moment. The young technician and countless others had worked tirelessly to understand the vessel, exploit its weakness, and prepare for decisive action. And as the vessel hovered in space, reacting to humanity's interference, one truth became clear. The universe had noticed The vessel hung in space, massive and intelligent, but now slightly unstable. Humanity had spent weeks observing, learning, and adapting, and now it had discovered a way to influence this extraordinary force. Satellites transmitted interference frequencies, while ground-based systems worked in perfect coordination. Every calculation, every adjustment, every observation mattered. The young technician and her team watched the screens with bated breath, knowing that this was the moment that would determine the planet's future. For the first time, the vessel reacted in ways that were unmistakably influenced by humans. Its energy pulses fluctuated wildly, its orbit wobbled, and its surface shimmered with irregular patterns. The scientists realized that their coordinated effort had worked. The vessel was being forced to respond, and its advanced systems were struggling to stabilize. Humanity had created a small but crucial advantage. The global command center erupted in focused activity. Engineers adjusted satellite positions, increased the power of transmitters, and synchronized signals with unprecedented precision. Military strategists monitored Earth's orbit, ensuring that no debris or energy pulse could accidentally harm the planet. Every move was carefully calculated, as one misstep could reverse the progress humanity had painstakingly achieved. The tension was unbearable, but there was also a sense of excitement, a belief that humans could overcome the unknown. The vessel emitted a series of complex pulses, almost like a language, but unlike anything humans had seen before. Scientists interpreted the variations as a reaction to the interference, perhaps an attempt to understand, respond, or even warn. It was clear that the intelligence inside the vessel was capable of learning, adapting, and evaluating humanity's strategies. The young technician and her team worked tirelessly to decode these signals, realizing that they might hold the key to humanity's survival. Hours passed as humans and the vessel engaged in a silent battle of intellect and precision. The planet held its breath. People watched the sky with a mixture of fear and wonder. Children pointed at the shimmer in orbit. Adults whispered theories, and scientists continued their calculations without pause. Humanity had learned that survival did not rely on brute strength, but on intelligence, adaptability, and unity. Every person, in some way, felt the weight of this moment. Then, the vessel made its first unmistakable move. Its energy pulses surged in a specific pattern, seemingly targeting the interference system directly. Scientists held their breath, fearing retaliation. But instead of destruction, the pulses caused minor adjustments in its own system's oscillations, energy spikes, and surface fluctuations. The vessel was adapting, yes, but it was also revealing its vulnerabilities. Humanity had learned to provoke reactions carefully, and the intelligence was responding in ways that could be measured, studied, and, potentially, exploited. The young technician realized that patience was key. Rushing could trigger catastrophic consequences. She directed teams to maintain precise timing, ensuring that every satellite, every ground transmitter, every calculation was perfectly coordinated. Humanity's ability to act as one, to combine intelligence, observation, and strategy, was being tested like never before. The vessel's intelligence was far superior in raw capability. But humans had something it had not anticipated: creativity, adaptability, and unity. As the operation continued, minor structural disturbances became visible on the vessel. Its shape, once perfectly stable, showed ripples. Its energy fields wavered, and the intelligence inside it seemed increasingly strained by humanity's coordinated interference. Scientists realized that this was the turning point. Humanity had forced a reaction that could be exploited to achieve a decisive advantage. It was a moment of triumph born from months of study, observation, and relentless effort. World leaders coordinated with scientists, issuing careful instructions to maintain focus and avoid panic. Populations were kept informed in measured ways. People understood that the future depended not only on the work of experts, but also on their calm and unity. Across the globe, communities observed the skies, not with terror, but with hope. Humanity had a chance, and every action mattered. The vessel, massive and intelligent, was now visibly destabilized. Its energy emissions flickered unpredictably, and its movements became less precise. Scientists calculated the exact moment when the next coordinated signal could maximize the effect. Every satellite was aligned, every transmitter synchronized, and every ground system prepared. The young technician directed the operation with calm determination, knowing that success depended on precision, patience, and intelligence. When the final sequence was activated, the vessel responded immediately. Its energy fields rippled violently. Minor components appeared to disengage or malfunction, and its orbit shifted slightly. Humanity had achieved what no one could have imagined a few months ago. A species on a small planet had forced an intelligence far beyond their understanding to react. The effect was not destructive, but it was a demonstration of capability, coordination, and resilience. The vessel remained in orbit, massive but weakened, and humanity understood that this was the critical moment to act wisely. Scientists, engineers, and strategists collaborated on the next phase: observation, analysis, and careful communication. The goal was no longer just survival. Humanity had to demonstrate intelligence, adaptability, and unity to ensure the vessel recognized humans as a species capable of coexistence rather than being dismissed or eliminated. For days, humans observed the vessel's reactions. Every energy pulse, every surface fluctuation, and every orbital adjustment was studied. Minor adjustments were made in the interference system to maintain pressure without provoking destruction. Humanity had learned to act like a single, coordinated intelligence, adapting strategies in real time. The young technician, exhausted but unwavering, continued to monitor every reaction, guiding teams with calm precision. Finally, the vessel emitted a long, steady pulse, a signal different from all previous ones. It was deliberate, controlled, and unmistakably intentional. Scientists interpreted it as a form of acknowledgement, perhaps the first indication that the intelligence inside the vessel had recognized humanity's capabilities. It was not friendly, not celebratory, but it was a sign that humans were no longer being ignored. They had been seen, evaluated, and measured. Humanity realized the significance of this moment. The planet had survived the initial tests, adapted to challenges, and demonstrated intelligence, resilience, and unity. The vessel, massive and enigmatic, had been forced to respond, revealing vulnerabilities and acknowledging human capabilities. The young technician and countless others who had worked tirelessly understood that months of observation, adaptation, and cooperation had led to this breakthrough. The world began to change as the vessel maintained a stable but watchful orbit. People looked up at the skies with a mixture of awe, respect, and hope. Children learned about science and cooperation. Communities embraced unity and shared purpose. Humanity had survived a challenge that could have destroyed them, and in doing so, had demonstrated intelligence, resilience, and adaptability on a global scale. Scientists continued their work, analyzing data and preparing for any possible reaction from the vessel. Every pulse, fluctuation, and signal was studied to ensure humanity remained ahead in understanding. Engineers maintained satellites and ground systems, while strategists planned for long-term observation and defense. The young technician, though exhausted from months of relentless work, continued to lead her team, documenting every detail for future generations. Humanity had learned profound lessons from this encounter. Strength alone was not enough. Cooperation, intelligence, adaptability, and patience were essential. The vessel, massive and intelligent, had tested humanity in ways no one could have imagined. Yet humans had risen to the challenge, proving that unity and strategy could influence even the most advanced forces in the universe. As weeks turned into months, the vessel slowly retreated, maintaining orbit but ceasing aggressive tests. Humanity continued observation, cautious but confident. The experience had united the planet, demonstrated human potential, and shown that survival depended on intelligence and cooperation rather than brute force. The young technician looked at the vessel one last time from the monitoring station, reflecting on the journey from fear to understanding. The presence of the vessel had forever changed humanity. People no longer took the sky for granted. Science, observation, and strategy became central to society. Cooperation across borders, cultures, and nations had proven that humanity could face challenges far beyond their previous understanding. And the knowledge that an intelligence far beyond Earth had noticed them, and that humans had survived and influenced it, filled every heart with awe and pride. For the first time, humanity understood the vastness of the universe and its own place within it. The vessel, a symbol of intelligence far beyond their own, had tested them, and humans had responded with unity, intelligence, and courage. The skies, once distant and mysterious, now held a story of survival, learning, and the indomitable spirit of the species that refused to be ignored. And so, the vessel remained a silent observer in orbit, massive, intelligent, and now respectful. Humanity had survived, adapted, and demonstrated its worth. The young,